Some debts are paid not with gratitude, but with betrayal. And Folake was about to receive her receipt in full. The aroma of freshly prepared eforiro filled her modest apartment as she ladled the vegetable stew into a plastic container for Segun, the struggling photographer's assistant who'd been crashing on her worn sofa for the past month. Her friend Bisola had warned her repeatedly, "You are building a castle for a man who will lock you out once it's finished." But Folake only smiled, adding extra fish to the container. She operated on a simple philosophy. Genuine kindness creates genuine loyalty. She believed that seeing someone's potential when they are broken would earn their devotion when they are whole. She believed that the young man curled up in her living room, too broke to afford a camera battery, would carry the memory of her sacrifice into his success. 18 months later, when his photography exhibition was featured in This Day Style and his portraits hung in the lobbies of Echo Hotel, he stood before journalists with a completely different woman attached to his arm. Caramel-skinned, fashion blogger thin, verified on Twitter. When interviewers asked about his journey from nothing to somewhere, Folake's name never crossed his lips, as if she'd been a fever dream rather than his foundation. Folake had arrived in this world carrying extra weight, not just physically, but spiritually. She was the type of person who absorbed everyone's problems like a sponge absorbs water. Her father used to say she was born with her great-aunt's soul, patient, giving, always sliding the last piece of meat from her plate to whoever looked hungriest. Growing up in the crowded streets of Surulere, Lagos, Folake learned quickly that her appearance would be public property. Market women squeezed her arms and clucked their tongues. "Hey, yeah, this girl is swelling like a geje bread," they'd announce to anyone listening. Extended family members whispered when she requested second helpings at parties. Boys at youth fellowship looked through her like glass, their attention fixed on slimmer girls in bodycon dresses. But Folake had developed a coping mechanism. If desirability was impossible, she'd become indispensable instead. She worked at her uncle's photography supply store in Idumota, surrounded by camera equipment, lighting gear, and backdrops. Equipment that captured weddings, graduations, and milestone birthdays. She knew every product intimately. More importantly, she understood human nature. Which customer needed enthusiastic sales pitches, which preferred quiet browsing, which came to the store not for equipment, but for someone to listen to their creative frustrations. At 29, Folake remained single. Her mother had stopped dropping hints. Her younger sister Bisi, petite, sharp-mouthed, married with twin boys, frequently offered unsolicited commentary. "Folake, if you just made small effort, lost some of this your size, maybe men would..." But Folake had stopped shrinking emotionally years ago. If her body occupied space, she'd fill that space with kindness instead of shame. That humid Monday in July, the universe shifted. The afternoon sun was brutal, the kind of Lagos heat that makes asphalt shimmer and tempers flare. Folake was closing her uncle's store when she noticed him, a young man slumped against the adjacent building, looking defeated. His camera bag was torn, his shirt was stained with sweat, and his eyes held that particular emptiness that comes from repeated disappointment. He was staring at a cracked phone screen like it contained bad news. "Brother, you fin donish?" Folake called out. "Store is closing, but you fit wait inside if Sunday worry you." His name was Segun. Segun Adeleke, he explained, an underpaid assistant to a cruel photographer in Ikeja who worked him 15 hours daily, paid him irregularly, and took credit for his creative ideas. He was 25, but exhaustion had carved decade-old lines around his eyes. His equipment was borrowed and damaged, his talent was undeniable but unrecognized. While they waited for the heat to break, Segun talked about his dreams of becoming a visual storyteller, about the photo series he wanted to create documenting everyday Lagos, about how he'd migrated from Ibadan 4 years ago with 5,000 naira and dreams too big for his pockets. Folake listened, not the performative listening people do while waiting to speak, but deep listening that sees the person beneath the problems. When evening came and the heat subsided, Folake made a decision that would eventually devastate her. "Come chop," she said simply. But wisdom teaches the hand that feeds a snake should not be surprised when it gets bitten. Segun came for dinner that evening, then returned the next evening, then the next. Folake lived alone in a face-me-I-face-you apartment in Surulere. Nothing impressive, just a room with a bed, a gas cooker, a standing fan, and a mirror with cracks spider-webbing across its surface. But what her space lacked in grandeur, she compensated for with warmth. She fed Segun like he was blood. White rice and stew, beans and dodo, indomie prepared with eggs and vegetables, whatever she could afford on her salary. He ate like someone who'd forgotten that fullness was possible. "You cook the way my grandmother used to," he said one night, eyes glistening with emotion. Folake smiled warmly. "Then you honor her memory by finishing everything." Slowly, Segun began revealing his true vision. He showed her his portfolio, powerful, evocative images that captured the soul of Lagos. Street hawkers frozen in golden hour light, danfo conductors mid-shout, children playing football in flooded streets, market women balancing impossible loads on their heads. "These are breathtaking," Folake whispered, studying each photograph carefully. "They are worthless," Segun said bitterly. "I can't afford to print them. My boss won't let me build a portfolio. I'm trapped." Folake studied him for a long moment before making a decision that would eventually bankrupt her heart. "What if I helped you escape the trap?" Segun blinked rapidly. "Help how?" "I have connections to printing shops through my uncle's store. I can negotiate deals on potter paper, frames, and display materials. You have the vision, I can provide the resources. Together we could build something." Segun stared in disbelief. "Why would you invest in me? You barely know me." Folake shrugged, suddenly bashful. "Because genuine talent shouldn't suffocate just because nobody else recognizes it yet. Because I see you." That night, sitting cross-legged on her floor with printed photographs spread around them like a visual testimony, they became collaborators. Not romantic partners initially, but something perhaps deeper. Two people who recognized possibility in each other when the world had written them off. Segun worked obsessively, shooting, editing, printing, creating. Folake brought him meals at midnight, encouraged him through creative blocks, prayed over his equipment before each shoot. She used her connections to get discounted supplies. She used her savings to pay for his first gallery space rental. 4 months later, Segun completed his first exhibition, Lagos Unfiltered. 12 stunning photographs that captured the city's contradictions: beauty in chaos, dignity in poverty, hope in hustle. Folake used her entire savings, money she'd been accumulating for a small business, to rent exhibition space at Terra Culture. She stood beside Segun's work, heart pounding, as Lagos's creative class wandered through, pausing, studying, sometimes purchasing. One woman, elegant, dripping designer labels, carrying a Hermes bag, studied a photograph of a bread seller for a full minute before asking, "Who captured this?" Segun stepped forward, voice trembling. "I did, ma." She purchased 4 photographs and gave him her business card. She was an art curator with international connections. That was the ignition. Within 7 months, Segun's work was being discussed not just by regular art enthusiasts, but by serious collectors, gallery owners, culture journalists. Folake convinced her uncle to let Segun use the back room of their store as a makeshift studio. She promoted his work to every customer, posted his images across social media platforms, connected him with potential clients. She became his manager, his promoter, his financial backer, and his chef, all without requesting compensation or recognition. Segun moved out of his abusive boss's studio and into a room near Folake's apartment. They saw each other constantly. He started calling her "my backbone," squeezing her hand during stressful moments, leaving thank you notes on her door. "I would be nothing without you," he whispered one exhausted evening after a successful client meeting. "We are building this together," Folake replied. But tectonic plates were shifting beneath the surface. As Segun's profile grew, so did his social media consumption. He began following photography influencers on Instagram, women with sculpted bodies and curated aesthetics, modeling in locations that cost more than Folake's annual rent. He studied them obsessively, engaged with their content, absorbed their visual language. One evening, Folake brought him her special jollof rice. She'd skipped lunch to afford the chicken. Segun barely looked up from his phone. "You know, I'm trying to eat lighter now. All this heavy food isn't good for my image." The words stung like iodine on an open wound. "Since when do you care about that?" Folake asked quietly. "Since I realized that in this industry, appearance matters as much as talent. People judge the artist as much as the art." Folake set the food down silently and left without responding. That night, she ate alone, convincing herself he was just stressed. Success created pressure. He didn't mean to be cruel. But the comments multiplied like bacteria. "Do you own anything besides Ankara? My ex used to take care of herself, you know. If you dressed more modern, maybe people would take our brand seriously." Each comment was a paper cut, and Folake, trained since childhood to absorb criticism quietly, said nothing. Segun's breakthrough arrived through a lifestyle influencer named Tola, light-skinned.
She'd discovered his work online and sent a direct message. "Your photography is incredible, very Afrocentric, very authentic. Let's collaborate." Segun was euphoric. "Folake, do you understand what this means? If Tola features my work, I'll reach a completely different audience." Folake smiled through her anxiety. "That's wonderful, Segun." The collaboration materialized quickly. Tola modeled for Segun's photos, posted the results. Her followers went wild. Commission requests flooded in. Suddenly, Segun had more work than he could manage alone. He hired an assistant, rented a proper studio, started attending art openings and gallery events, spaces where Folake felt profoundly alien. "Come with me tonight," Segun said one Saturday, adjusting his new designer shirt. "There's an exhibition opening in Ikoyi." Folake hesitated. "I don't have anything appropriate for those kinds of places." "Just wear something nice. You'll be fine." It wasn't fine.
The gallery was populated by people who looked like they'd stepped out of Vogue, slim, polished, draped in designer everything. Folake wore her best Ankara gown, but felt enormous, clumsy, invisible. Segun introduced her to people half-heartedly. "This is Folake. She helps with administrative stuff." Not, "This is the woman who fed me when I was starving." Not, "This is the woman who believed in me when I had nothing." Just administrative stuff. Tula appeared, all radiant energy and expensive perfume. She air-kissed Segun's cheeks, lingering slightly too long. "Segun, darling, everyone is obsessed with the new series." She glanced at Folake briefly. "Oh, hello." That was it. Just hello. Later, Folake overheard two women talking near the wine table. "Did you see Segun's friend, the heavy-set one?" "Mm-hmm. Shocking he brought her here." "Probably family. He won't keep her visible long, not if he wants to maintain his aesthetic." Folake locked herself in the bathroom and wept silently. When they returned home that night, Segun was buzzing with excitement. "Did you see how many people wanted to commission work? This is it, Folake. This is what we've been working toward." "We?" asked Folake softly. "Yes, we." He kissed her forehead absently. "I couldn't have gotten here without your support." Support. Not partnership. Not love. Support. 8 months after the Tola collaboration, Segun launched his own creative studio in Lekki, Adeleke Visuals. The opening was covered by Bella Naija, attended by celebrities, sponsored by Canon Nigeria. Segun wore a custom suit. Tola wore a designer dress and appeared beside him in every photograph. Folake attended only because she'd shown up uninvited. "Segun?" Segun seemed genuinely surprised. "You came?" "Of course, this is our dream." His smile weakened. "Right, our dream." But his eyes were already scanning for more important people. The crushing final moment came 3 weeks later. Folake visited Segun at his new studio, carrying a container of his favorite afang soup. She'd woken up early to prepare it fresh. She found him with Tola, laughing intimately, their heads bent together over a laptop screen. When they noticed her, they separated quickly. "Folake," Segun said, standing abruptly, "what are you doing here?" "I brought you food." "I told you I'm eating healthier now. All this heavy soup and swallow, it's affecting my brand image." "Your brand image?"
Tola smiled thinly. Segun and I were just strategizing for New York Photography Week. We're positioning his work internationally. New York Photography Week. We. Folake set the soup down carefully. I'll leave. Wait, Segun called, not to apologize, but to delegate. Can you drop those old prints at your uncle's store? I'm working with better quality materials now. Don't need them anymore. Something inside Folake splintered completely. She walked out without responding. That evening, Segun sent a WhatsApp message. We need to talk. Tomorrow? They met at a restaurant in Ikeja. Segun arrived late, distracted, checking his phone repeatedly. Listen, Folake, he began, avoiding eye contact. You've been incredible, seriously. I'll always be grateful for what you did when I was nobody. But things are different now. Different how? I'm moving in a different direction. Tola and I are building something together. She understands the creative industry, she has access, she fits the visual aesthetic I'm cultivating. And I don't, Folake said, barely above a whisper. Segun sighed like she was making this unnecessarily difficult. You are beautiful on the inside, really. But look around, look at this industry. I need someone who complements the brand visually, someone who photographs well, someone who isn't fat, Folake finished for him. He didn't deny it. I gave you everything, she whispered. My money, my time, my connections, my faith. I believed in you when you were sleeping on my floor. And I'm grateful, Segun said. But gratitude isn't love. And honestly, Folake, I was never in love with you. You were useful. The word useful echoed in her mind long after Segun left. Useful, like a tool, like equipment, like something to be utilized, then discarded when better options appeared. For 4 weeks, Folake disappeared from public life. She called in sick continuously, ignored family calls, remained in her dark room with curtains drawn, obsessively replaying every moment, every meal, every prayer she'd offered for Segun's rise. She scrolled through Instagram, watching them everywhere. Segun and Tola at art galleries, at exclusive events, in magazine features. Comments celebrated them as creative power couple, visual storytelling royalty, aesthetic perfection. Folake ate to numb the agony. Family-sized packs of chin-chin, loaves of bread slathered with butter, whatever provided temporary comfort. Food had always been her refuge. Now it was her only companion. Her sister BC finally forced entry into the apartment. Folake, what is happening to you? You look sick. Folake couldn't produce tears anymore. She simply sat there, hollow. BC sat beside her, and for once, her sharp tongue softened. He wasn't worth one tear from your eyes, sister. Any man who judges you by your packaging doesn't deserve what's inside.
But I genuinely loved him, Folake whispered. No, BC said firmly. You loved who you imagined he would become. You loved the potential. But he never loved you. He loved what you could provide. The words hurt because they contained truth. That night, Folake stared at herself in her cracked mirror, really examined herself. Her eyes were swollen. Her skin looked dull. Her body, which she'd tried not to hate, felt like a cage. She remembered Segun's word, useful. And something inside her, something buried beneath years of being labeled too much and not enough, finally awakened. Not with rage, but with crystal clarity. I wasn't useful. I was a treasure he was too foolish to value. The following morning, Folake made a decision, not to seek revenge, not to beg Segun's return, but to reconstruct herself for herself. She scheduled her first therapy appointment. She joined a gym with a compassionate trainer who emphasized wellness over weight. She started journaling her emotions instead of eating them. She unfollowed Segun and Tola and everyone who made her feel insufficient. And slowly, painfully, she began the reconstruction. The transformation wasn't linear. Days existed when Folake wanted to surrender. Days she stared at her gym bag feeling foolish. Days she binged on suya and wept in the shower. But her therapist, Mrs. Okoro, taught her a revolutionary thing. Healing isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up one more time than you fall down. Folake kept getting up. She exercised not to become thin, but to become powerful. She learned that her body wasn't her enemy. It had carried her through trauma, through heartbreak, through years of being told it was defective. Her body deserved appreciation, not punishment. Food stopped being her opponent too. With nutritionist guidance, Folake learned to eat with consciousness, nourishing her body instead of silencing her pain. The weight decreased gradually, but more significantly, the shame evaporated. One morning, 7 months after the breakup, Folake woke up and didn't immediately think about Segun. That was the day she knew she was genuinely healing. She also made another decision. She resigned from her uncle's store. It was time to construct something entirely her own. Folake had always possessed a gift for visual merchandising, understanding how products should be displayed, how spaces should feel. So she launched a small business, event styling and decor, helping people transform ordinary spaces into extraordinary experiences. She operated from her phone initially, posted photos on Instagram, joined event planning networks. Slowly, clients materialized, then more clients, then enthusiastic referrals. Within 14 months, Folake had established a reputation, not because she was thin, not because she was loud, but because she was extraordinary at her craft. She relocated into a small office in Yaba, hired 2 assistants, began receiving features in event planning publications, and one afternoon, her phone rang with an opportunity that would change everything. Miss Folake, we'd love to have you design and style our annual gala. The call came from Lagos Fashion and Design Week, one of West Africa's most prestigious creative events. They needed a stylist who understood both cultural authenticity and contemporary innovation. Folake almost declined. The creative industry still felt like Segun's world, a space where she didn't belong. But then she remembered Mrs. Okoro's words, "You don't need anyone's permission to exist powerfully." She accepted. The 2 weeks preceding the gala were controlled chaos, coordinating vendors, managing installations, ensuring every visual detail was flawless. Folake barely slept. On gala night, she arrived early, dressed in a breathtaking custom Asoke ensemble. People noticed. Who designed the styling? That's the lead stylist. She's stunning. Folake was too focused on ensuring perfection to notice the whispers. Then, across the venue, she saw him. Segun. He was there with Tola, networking with potential clients. He looked successful, designer everything, expensive camera equipment, perfectly curated appearance. But when his eyes found Folake, time suspended. His jaw literally dropped. The woman commanding the room, exuding confidence without arrogance, couldn't possibly be the same Folake he left broken. But it was. Her body had transformed, yes, toned, healthy, radiating strength, but it was more than physical. Her entire energy had metamorphosed. She didn't shrink anymore. She didn't apologize for occupying space. She emanated power. Segun excused himself from Tola and walked towards Folake, pulse racing. Folake? She turned, her expression serene, neutral. Segun? No anger, no longing, just polite recognition. You look absolutely incredible. Thank you, she replied steadily. I feel incredible. He swallowed hard. I heard you're the lead stylist tonight. That's amazing. It is, she agreed simply. Excuse me, I have responsibilities. She started to walk away. Wait, Segun called. Can we talk after the event? Folake paused. About what exactly? About us, about everything. I've been thinking. There is no us, Segun, she said gently. There never genuinely was. The gala was spectacular. Folake's styling was praised universally, the perfect fusion of cultural heritage and contemporary elegance. bold installations balanced with sophisticated restraint. At the event's conclusion, she was called on stage for recognition. The applause was thunderous. Segun watched from the audience, something collapsing inside him. After the event, as Folake was departing, she saw Segun waiting near the exit. Alone, Tola had vanished. "She left early," he said quietly. "We've been having problems." Folake didn't ask why. She didn't care. "I made a terrible mistake, Folake," his voice cracked. "I was stupid. I was shallow. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I couldn't see past appearances." Folake studied him for an extended moment. Then she smiled, not with cruelty, but with the wisdom of someone who had survived fire and emerged forged stronger. "You didn't throw away the best thing. You revealed your true character. And in doing so, you gave me an invaluable gift." "What gift?" he whispered. "You taught me that my value exists independently of anyone's recognition. The person who knows their worth doesn't negotiate it with those who can't see it." She touched his shoulder briefly. "I forgive you, but forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. I hope you find authenticity, Segun. I already have." And with that, she walked away. Not running, not glancing backward, just walking forward into the life she'd constructed from the ruins of heartbreak.
9 months after the gala, Folake's business had quadrupled. She'd styled 5 major campaigns, been featured in Guardian Life, and expanded her team to 8 people. Her name was becoming synonymous with excellence in event design. But more than professional success, Folake had discovered something rarer: wholeness. She no longer measured her value by someone else's desire. She no longer apologized for existing fully. She'd learned to love herself fiercely, unapologetically, completely. Love found her again, not in dramatic gestures, but in consistent presence. His name was Chidi, a thoughtful architect who loved her intelligence, her resilience, and the way she transformed spaces with vision. He never commented on her size. He never compared her to anyone else. One evening, watching the sunset from Bar Beach, Chidi said something that made her cry joyful tears. "You know what I admire most about you, Folake? You chose yourself when choosing yourself was the hardest thing to do. And anyone who gets to love you now understands they are loving someone who already knows she's complete." As for Segun, she'd heard through industry channels that his relationship with Tola had imploded spectacularly. His business was struggling, he'd alienated collaborators with his ego. Folake didn't celebrate his difficulties. She didn't gloat. She simply understood what wisdom teaches. One season of arrogance can demolish what took years to construct. 1 year after the gala, Folake sat in her expanded office studying the vision board she'd created during her darkest period. It read, "I will never betray myself again." She'd honored that commitment, and she'd learned life's most powerful lesson. The person who supports you in obscurity is worth more than gold, but the person who abandons you in visibility teaches you something priceless, that your value was never theirs to determine. What you genuinely treasure in private, you don't discard in public. She was not perfect, she was not without flaws, but she was complete, and that was everything.
This is Folake's story. The woman who discovered that the most important relationship you'll ever cultivate is the one you have with yourself. Here's the question that matters. When someone shows you they value what you can do for them more than who they are to you, will you have the courage to choose yourself even when love makes you want to stay? Let's hear your answer in the comment section. If you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, comment, like, and share for more interesting and educative stories like this. Thank you. Bye.